Hi everyone, welcome back. It's been a while. I haven't uploaded anything in a few months, but I will try to get back to it. And today I decided to come back with a book that I actually read last year, but it's part of a series that I'm still reading, and I like it enough that I want to have one review for each book in the series. So the first one is Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson, Book 1 in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. And this is actually the Italian copy that I have because I started reading it 12 years ago and I was reading in Italian because my English copy is lost somewhere. Hopefully it's coming, but I'm not sure. So anyway, I have my Italian copy here, which is quite nice. It's a hardcover. I don't usually buy hardcovers anymore, but like 10 years ago in Italy, you could only buy these ones. This this book has been very popular recently, this series in general. You can see probably a lot of videos already, but I wanted to say my opinions because I read this particular book 6 times, so I have a lot of opinions. So let's talk about the plot a little bit. In the first book, because there are many subplots, many different continents. It's quite complicated. But in the first book, we have the Malazan Empire, which is quite small originally, but it has conquered a lot of places. And unfortunately, because it's so big, it's conquered so many places. There are a lot of rebellions, and people want to have independence. And so the empire has to try to stop these rebellions and to conquer the last free cities that are left. And in this particular book, we have 2 free cities, which the Malazan Empire is trying to conquer. So we follow mostly the Malazan army trying to conquer these free cities. But we also have a little bit, a small group of citizens from one of these 2 cities. So we can kind of see the 2 point of view in this war. So yeah, you can say Malazan is military fantasy for the most part because you follow the army pretty much in every book, and not just when they fight, but also like their daily lives and how they survive. And I think for some people that might be a bit boring, but I found it very interesting, and I liked it the first time I read it, and I still like it now. And actually, every time in each book, the Malazan groups are usually my favorite. There are some exceptions, but usually I like to follow the Malazans more. Anyway, yeah, so it's military fantasy, but there are also other themes and topics. There's a lot about religion, which I didn't know I liked until I started reading Malazan. I didn't know I was so interested in religion in fantasy until Malazan. There's also a lot about philosophy. Maybe not the first book, not much, but in the later books, there's a lot more philosophy, and I liked it. It's usually so philosophy, religion, geography, and history were not my favorite subject at school, but in Malazan they're also interesting and entertaining that I like them. Erikson managed to make boring subjects interesting to me. So that's one reason why I like Malazan. But there is a deeper reason why I like it. Actually, 2. One is because Malazan was my first high fantasy. Before Malazan, I used to read, the young adult fantasy that was popular at that time, like Twilight and all that stuff. And then I read Malazan and I realized, oh, this is my this is my genre, this is what I like to read. So from Malazan, then I discovered other things. Even I read it before Lord of the Rings, which is usually the first book, the first high fantasy people read. But yeah, so it was very important as a reader, but also as a writer, because it taught me that you need to work a lot. before you start writing a book, especially with fantasy, high fantasy, because you need to create a world, you need to work on this history and cultures and religions and so many different things, and you can't just write the book. You know, you need some preparation, you need some word building, and I learned this through Malazan. So it was very important to me as a writer as well. So this is why even if book one isn't perfect and it isn't the best book in the series by far, I still give it 5 stars, and I will always give it 5 stars because it's so important to me. So it's not very objective, but it's just too important to me, so it will always have 5 stars. There are things I don't like in this book, in the series in general. Well, one of them, which is pretty normal for me, it's the romance. There is some romance, or at least there are some relationships in the series, and most of them are not, you know, that I don't really care that much whether they end up together or not, but it's still better than some other fantasy books, so that's one point. And one thing that I didn't like the first time I read the series, but I'm liking, well, I'm not as disturbed as I used to be now, is that these books are very realistic, and you know, the author is not afraid to show you what happens sometimes in real life, especially in, you know, in an empire where people are always at war, and there's so many rebellions and bad things happen. It's normal, it's awful, but it happens, and the author is not afraid to show that. And you know, 12 years ago I was 16, I was obviously you know, a bit weaker, but now that I don't know, I'm just older, so I'm not as disturbed by those scenes, but some people might be. So I guess if you are that kind of person that gets upset easily, I wouldn't recommend this series, because there are some very strong scenes. Not in book one, not really, I think, but like in book 2 and 3 and all the others, yeah, a lot of really heavy and strong scenes that might not be for everybody. But yeah, these are the two main things I don't really like about the series, but the rest is so good that I don't really care. One thing I really love about this series is the magic system, because you know, I like those magic systems which have rules and are very structured. But for me, magic isn't science. You know, it's not supposed to be something you can understand. It should be mysterious and not easily understood by people who cannot practice magic. And this is what happens in Malazan. Like, it's difficult to understand what magic is and how it works, and I like that, you know. That's what magic is supposed to be like for me. So yeah, all the magic stuff isn't very clear. I think it can be a bit confusing, but if you like it that way, then you will enjoy Malazan. If you like to understand every single thing, you might not like it. And that's another point. Like, if you want answers to everything, maybe Malazan is not for you, because I haven't finished the series. I reached book 8, but I'm rereading it because I forgot a lot of stuff. And in book 8, you don't get a lot of answers. And I heard even at the end of the series, you don't get all the answers you might want. So I think if you want to know everything, if you want to understand everything, Malazan is not for you, I think. But if you are okay not understanding every single thing and just enjoying the read, then I would definitely recommend Malazan. Now, as someone who read book one multiple times, I can say that it gets better on reread, especially when you reach the later books. So I read until book 8, and when I reread book one last year, I was so surprised to see how many things I could understand more compared to the first time I read it. You know, the first time I was just enjoying the plot. But this time I could actually understand a lot of things. There are a lot of references to later books, to later characters and events. And yeah, I think Malazan is one of the series that you need to reread to fully appreciate what it is, even though the books are quite big. So yeah, like starting from book 3, I think it will be always around 1,000 pages. So if you're not into big books, chunky books, you might not like it, but if you would like them, yeah, you should give it a try. And one thing I would suggest for people who are starting to read Malazan is to not read it alone. Maybe find someone to read it with, or someone who has read it already, so you can discuss things and you talk about things that you might not understand. Because if you read it alone, I think it's easier to give up. A little bit like going to the gym, you know. If you go alone, you don't have the motivation to keep going and you will give up. And I guess Malazan is the same. But yeah, this is my review. I mean, 5 stars for me because it's very important, even though it's not perfect. And there are some things I didn't like, but I still love it. It's still very important to me. Character-wise, one thing I want to say is that you know, I read this first time when I was 16. Now I'm 28, and obviously my taste has changed a lot, and you can see that. And that's another thing I like about Malazan, that you can read it in different stages of your life and you will find new things you like, new things you don't like. So for example, there's a character, Anamander Rake. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but anyway, he's you know, he's this mysterious character, super strong, with white long hair and a big sword that does a lot of awful things. And I'm not going to say more, but you know, it's like he's supposed to be a cool character. And when I was 16 and I read the book, I was like, wow, he's my favorite character by far. Like, obviously, he's so cool. And when I read it last year, I realized like he's not really important in the story. Like, he doesn't do anything important apart from a couple of scenes, but he's not like he's not that cool to me anymore. You know, I enjoyed reading about other characters in the book compared to him. So yeah, that's another thing I think Malazan is good at. Especially when I will do a review for book 2, I will talk about this a bit more. But I guess this is all. I don't think I said anything more or anything new compared to other people who have been reviewing this series, but I wanted to give my own opinion, and that's it. So thank you for watching. Hopefully it won't be too long until I post another video, but I will try my best. Thank you again, and see you next time.